Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasche. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest. She's a repeat guest. Welcome back to the show, Christina Kovacs.
Thank you so much. Honored to be back.
Well, great to have you here. Last time you were on the show, I know you're based in Fort Lauderdale, and you invest in a few markets in Missouri. Maybe for the folks who haven't met you yet, perhaps give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point in your journey.
Sure. But prior to investing in multifamily, I was doing single-family home flips, long-term rental holds, and also some short-term rentals. And then in 21, attended a virtual conference, learned more about multifamily because really wanted to scale and be more efficient. And then ended up starting to invest in multifamily as an LP in some deals. And then networking through multiple different conferences and groups, I ended up purchasing our first multifamily with 4 other partners in Kansas City, Missouri. And that was a 54 unit. And that was our first active GP role.
I love it. Now, a lot of folks that have gotten into this space really started first and foremost in those high growth markets. Mm-hmm. Kansas City is certainly a primary market, but it's not, I wouldn't categorize it as a high growth market. It's not Austin. It's not Nashville.
Right.
And a lot of those markets tend to be a lot more stable. They tend to generate more cash flow. They don't have the same appreciation that perhaps other markets do, but they also, the good news is they're slow and steady. The bad news is they're slow and steady.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So ultimately, when Steady Eddie wins the race sometimes, though, compared to the ones that drop super fast. And Springfield, Missouri is even more of a tertiary market, and I invest there as well. So that actually was my second asset that we purchased with some partners, again, JV, my GP, and that was a 43 unit. And both those assets have steadily appreciated for rental income as far as market value, just as much as we're pushing rents is how much they're going to appreciate. It's not much additional market appreciation beyond that. It's all about operations and really making sure your business plan, you execute it properly. Since the 43 and 54 unit, we have now also purchased a 21 unit townhome complex in Springfield, Missouri, and we just purchased that June 30th. So that's been exciting to get back into the weeds of things again, because we didn't purchase anything for almost 2.5 years. It was really hard to find anything that penciled out. And we finally found this beautiful townhome community in the most perfect location with Lululemon's nearby. And for Springfield, Missouri, to have stores like that, it's one of the best areas of Springfield. So it's all about location.
When we think about assets of that size, in some respects, it falls into no man's land. It's too large to be in the residential 1 to 4. It's way too small to attract any institutional capital, and it's too small to dedicate management, for that matter, because you need to be at least in that 75 to 100 units in order for the economics to work, for you to dedicate management. And now you have 2 assets in the same market. You're still below that 100 units, but you're edging closer, where you're starting to get some economies of scale. What's the game plan?
So we have an amazing third-party PM who we have incredible communication with, and that's what it's all about with a third-party PM ultimately. And I believe you do have to be a hands-on owner and asset manager. And we are both of those things. This third party is okay with us going through our own contractors if we need to, if her bids come in too high. With this townhome project, there is a pretty large CapEx plan that we have for it. And we are doing most of those bids on our own outside of her. So asking her for referrals, of course, but going on site, meeting with the contractors and figuring this out on our own and having them manage for us from afar, the small maintenance requests and collecting of rent, et cetera. But we are somewhat of a hybrid approach when it comes to this initial takeover of the 21 unit townhomes. But even when we do scale, I don't see us self-managing. We don't have a boots in the ground, which initially when I first started, I never thought I would be in this position to not have a boots in the ground in the market that I'm investing. But that's just how it worked out with one of my partnerships in the 43. I did have a boots in the ground and it didn't work out because they weren't doing what they said they were going to do. So ultimately we were managing better for my partner and I from California and Florida than he was on the ground. So ultimately we took over lead on that 43. And then it's helped us to grow into the position that we are today to become asset managers from out of state that can handle this really well with our third party PM that we have.
I think part of the key to that is having strong systems. So, for example, if, at the end of each day, and I don't know if you're doing this quite to this degree, but having tools where the work that closes out the day with photos and they're all logged and time-stamped and all of that sort of thing. So there's a time record, a history of what's happening on the project, including, by the way, even having your own security cameras that you're monitoring remotely so that you can independently see what's happening. And to what extent are those types of systems core to achieving this?
100. Yeah, that's exactly right. When we were just there for the takeover, we installed cameras. That was crucial to have eyes 24/7 if we need, and you do need them. And also getting our new contractors on board, because we haven't had a large CapEx like this since we purchased that 43 back in 2022. So there were some contractors that we had to get new to fulfill the needs that we need. So meeting those people, getting those relationships and building that rapport and knowing the radical transparency is what we live by, and knowing what the expectations are. We set that right up from the front with everyone, including the PM and anyone that wants to work with us. We do need that accountability with the photos and the feedback. And I need to know if you've received the text. When you say just you don't say anything back for a few hours, sometimes that automatically know it's not going to work. So if I text you, I want to know you received it, and then we'll go from there.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes things go off the rails in a project for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes you're dealing with someone who is not honest, and that can take a while to figure out.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're dealing with someone who is not competent, but they are honest at the core. They just don't know what they're doing. From a distance, it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between the two because the effect is the same. And then, of course, you've got that very small minority that are high integrity. They really want to do a good job. Sometimes there are surprises. That's just life. How do you make that distinction?
So initially, for instance, we had multiple units planned to be vacant for this takeover. So for the painting, I hired 3 different painters to see the quality, the communication, the integrity. Ultimately, it's a numbers game, and someone's going to come out winning in the end, but you need to test out multiple people. There's still things that could happen, right? But initially, this first month in, we're feeling good with the people that we've chosen based off of them being tested out initially on something.
When I think about the goals for an owner, developer, asset manager, they're often not aligned with the goals of a subcontractor. So, for example, as an owner, your goal is to get the project done on budget, on time, quality level's got to be there. And sometimes for a subcontractor, their goal is to keep their people busy, which is not the same. It's not aligned. They may have 5 people on site one day and then 2 people on site the next because there's some other small job. How do you manage that aspect to make sure that subcontractor's goals, in fact, are aligned with yours and the timeline doesn't all of a sudden become extended because they're just trying to balance workloads amongst projects?
Well, and that's the thing. We did hire one of the people that in the test group, their crew, they had overbooked themselves. And I know they work with another community nearby that we respect highly, those owners, and we were impressed that they work with them. But at the same time, when you're overbooking yourself, you're not committing to us fully. So we did have that situation occur, but now we know there's only so much we can give that crew of people. And we will do it with eyes wide open and make sure that there's a proper timeline ahead of time to make sure that they can fulfill it, because we know that they're probably not able to. So they're not our first choice, knowing what we know. And then the other situations are, I think that being a good owner, also about being transparent and upfront about your pricing and your budget, and not being wishy-washy, I think helps contractors too. Let them know that you're not wasting their time either, and that this is just what it is. And if it doesn't work, no problem at all. And there is someone that will fulfill that budget request that you need, and you just gotta keep looking. But that's what I found too. Like some people's budget were double their quotes were double what I would have in my budget. So I don't want to waste their time trying to figure out a quote for us when I already know what I'm going to pay. So I think there's multiple levels of giving respect to them and them giving it back to you to build that relationship and rapport.
When a number comes in on a bid, good or bad, you don't really know. You might like the number, but if it comes in too high, maybe it's a mismatch in expectations. Maybe it's an error in understanding the scope of work. Maybe it is they're expecting you to negotiate them down. You don't really know in advance. How do you determine? And you can have the same issues, even if you like the number. You might say, okay, great number, you're in, but there could still be the misunderstanding of scope and expectations, even with a number that you like. How do you get that figured out?
Well, again, trial and error.
Right. Okay.
Ultimately, with the quality of work, I mean, I call referrals that they give me also. That's one of the ways to mitigate it. But ultimately on your job, that person you're calling for referrals still can have lower expectations than you do too. So I think you got to take a chance on some of these people, and you're going to weed out the ones that are going to work or not. Yeah. And it's also with these 21 townhomes, we have a 43 C class nearby where some of the contractors that we would use on that saw larger budgets because it's a nicer townhome community. So, and it just changes the way people quote on, like, it's just for a mansion versus a ranch. You know, when someone comes to your house, they already have a preconceived idea of what your wallet's going to spend, right? That's something that we're trying to work through that too. And that's why I think being upfront about the budget, to let them know is crucial. So you don't waste their time. They don't waste your time.
I love it. Well, so many investors struggle with this notion of managing projects from a distance. For me, it's something that has been second nature for, decades, because I came from the tech industry. And at one point I had 13 engineering organizations reporting to me in different cities. So I was always in the wrong place for somebody.
Yeah.
And so, just develop that skill. And I can tell you it's much easier to figure out the quality assurance on anything construction related as opposed to something that's deep in the guts of a microprocessor, which you can't see until years later and you've spent a few $1 million. So it's a much easier form of QA, but still a lot of folks struggle with it, and systems are the key to it. What are some of the newest systems that you've implemented just based on what you've learned?
Luckily, it does help with AI now too, that we can plug and play all of our KPI data, our unit turns, how long they're taking, the cost for each one, and really hone in on where the bottlenecks are on some of these turns and where we might have to hire someone else for a job that ends up being the bottleneck that keeps it vacant for too long during a turn. So that's been super helpful because it saves so much time, and they're so much smarter than us. So obviously we're checking everything that we pull out of AI at the same time, but it's nice to have that extra brain.
I love that. And yeah, we absolutely use AI to validate a lot of assumptions as well, and just see what are the numbers elsewhere in the industry for this particular line item. And we use it that way as well. I love that. Well, Christina, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
ChristinaKovacs.com. We can connect anytime over LinkedIn, Calendly, all the links are there. So love to chat.
Awesome. Well, Christina, great to catch up. And for the listeners at home, definitely want to connect with Christina Kovacs at ChristinaKovacs.com. The links will be in the show notes. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.